Hi, and welcome to the Spawdcast. My name's Carrie Hyde, and I am your host and your pet's life coach. I bring on guests from all over the world. If you've been listening to my podcast, you know I'm very picky about who I bring on and why I bring them on. So I search far and wide, and sometimes people just spark my interest a little bit. And they may not be a veterinarian, they may not be a vet tech, they may not be anybody necessarily that you would think someone like me would bring on a podcast, but I actually think the value of their stories are so much more, they're deeper than what we would think that they are. So since a lot of our listeners are listening to try to educate themselves and learn about what they can do with their pets, I think it's important that we talk to people who may not have been in the pet industry, they're not veterinarians, they just started to learn about diet. So I brought on somebody that kind of fits that bill part way, but also he does some stuff with dogs. So he's learned a lot because of the dogs that he gets to work with. So I want to introduce you to our next guest, whose name is Brandfas. Did I pronounce that right? I am so bad. He just told me how to pronounce it.
It's Brandfas.
Brandfas. Okay, Brandfas. It's not that hard, Carrie. I apologize. But so Brian, I brought him on. So Brian and I kind of talk a little bit through Facebook and stuff, and he just is kind of an interesting guy. Tell us a little bit, but before we get into the dog stuff, I also want to talk about your little bit. I know you were in the Air Force, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Brian, tell us a little bit about being in the Air Force, and I want people to know this is normal. Just guys, just people, just do this. You don't have to be, we're just all normal people just wanting our better for our pets. So tell us a little bit. How long were you in the Air Force?
I served for almost 27 years.
Wow.
So I joined right after high school. I was supposed to be a vet. That was what I always wanted to do as a kid, and I'm not really sure what happened with that. Joined the Air Force not as a career. My intent was to do one tour, and that turned into multiple tours, and like I said, almost 27 years.
Wow. 27 years.
Thank you. As I started to approach the end of my career, I lost my dog, and her name was Bella. She was a 10-year-old Rottie mix, and she developed a bladder tumor. I don't remember exactly what it was called. It was non-cancerous, but basically the diagnosis was that they couldn't go in and do any surgery to remove it, and it would eventually make its way over the bladder, over to, I think, the urethra, block that, and basically cause kidney failure.
How old was she?
She was 10, and the vet said that he couldn't pinpoint the time that she would have. It could be 3 days, it could be 3 years. Turned out to be about 3 months. And when I lost her, I wasn't sure when I was going to get another dog. I was going to take a break, and that lasted about 3 weeks. And
we all say that. I just lost my cat of 20 years, and I do cat rescue, and I have a little kitten right now out of the 5 that I'm doing rescue with right now that I'm madly in love with. Already named him. His name's Smudge, but I could see the future, and I'm scared. I don't want to do it again, but I know I will. I already named the kitty.
Yeah, it's such a personal thing. I know exactly what people go through when they lose a pet, and I hate when people are like, well, just go get another one. It's not that easy.
My favorite, which just happened, is, well, she was 20. I'm like, right. Yeah, exactly. 20 years of my life, I cuddled and snugged and fed and cared for. 20 years. It's a long time. So, but people always do that, right? Well, how old was she?
Yeah.
And then if you say, well, she was 3, then they go, oh, they look at you like you did something wrong. I know. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, it's hard.
And yeah, and and it's interesting about the age thing too, because like she was 10, and people were like, well, big dogs like that, they only live to 10 or 12 years anyways.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that bothers me now, knowing what I know.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, why is that? That doesn't have to be that way. Who came up with that number?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No,
who came up with it?
But
the oldest living dog, you probably already know this, but the oldest living dog that they have on record, that is actually on record, his name was Bowie, and he was 28 years old, and he was a large breed, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't know that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you're right. Who comes up with these arbitrary numbers?
But losing Bella introduced me to, I found the rescue, because like I said, it lasted about 3 weeks before I knew I just needed to get another dog. And I adopted Athena from Two Blondes All Breed Rescue here in Colorado.
I'm sorry, I just want to get the story kind of right. Did you think that the cause of her bladder cancer could have been about what you were feeding, or did you start to have guilt over that?
Not at the time, because I didn't know any better.
Okay, right. And that's for sure. I want people to know you shouldn't feel guilt, because we don't feed our animals stuff because we think it's going to be bad. But so then you get your next dog.
I get my next dog, which introduces me to the rescue. And the whole process was such a good process that I started volunteering with this rescue. And that became kind of my post military career plans, because I had about a year left before I was going to retire. And so I started working with the rescue, and wound up with, before the year was done, I had 3 dogs. So I went from 1 to 3, and the third one I always joke is my oopsie.
Oh yeah.
Because I never intended to have 3 dogs, but he picked me, and it was just meant to be. But during this time, I started to talk to people and do some research, and I watched Pet Fooled. And
that'll get you.
Yep. And
that'll get you. You watch Pet Fooled, you're done.
And that was me. I watched that, and I kid you not, I sat my dogs down and I apologized to them. I couldn't believe what I was doing to them. And then I started thinking back to Bella, and that was when, again, I didn't feel guilt, but I definitely believed that I contributed. Because not only was I feeding kibble, but I was feeding like the worst.
Yeah.
Kibble. Yeah.
I told you in our little pre-conversation, I used to feed my dogs pedigree, so you can't yeah. Mm-hmm. I know.
And so I decided that I was going to do better this time around. And I don't think, I always warn people that if you watch Pet Fooled, be ready to make changes. Because I don't think you can watch that and not make
be an animal lover
and not make some changes.
If you watch that and you're an animal lover, you're going to have a hard time continuing to put kibble in the bowl. You're going to have a hard time.
Yeah, and one of the things that sticks out about that for me, that movie, is that it all makes sense. It's not like you're watching a late night infomercial and somebody's saying, hey, take this pill and lose, 40 pounds while eating hamburgers. And you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense, but man, the guy's on TV. You're not trying to talk
Yeah.
yourself into this stuff. You're listening to it and you're like, that makes perfect sense. You break down the dog's digestive, system from its teeth, to its tail, and you're just like, why would I feed him Captain Crunch?
Yeah. No, you're right. It's so weird that we even have this, I guess it's a fight that's going on. For people like me that have been in the industry for a long time, it's been a slow road, but it's so weird to me that we have to, that I have a podcast about feeding your pet whole fresh food. Like it makes no sense. And when you start to learn it, it's such a light bulb that comes on, and it is just common sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're watching this and you're like, oh, I can't believe you sat your dogs down and apologized. Dr. Karen Becker says that when she realized all of the animals that she spayed and neutered, at these young ages, that she literally apologized to her pet clients and said she's so sorry because she couldn't take it back. So that feeling of just, I didn't know.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing is just, we didn't know. And I come back to that quite often because, again, like I said, this is all common sense. It makes so much sense. And so I always ask myself, why has none of my vets ever told me any of this stuff?
Good question. Good question.
I've had dogs my, entire adult life. And
have you had that question answered to you a little bit, just as you're learning, like why you think vets didn't tell you?
I think so. And I think for them as well, I don't think they know either.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is just the way we've always done things, the way it's always been. Just like the age thing, people just accept that, dogs live 10 to 12 years, maybe a little bit longer if they're a small breed.
That they're a senior at age 7.
And we just accept it. So that's why I feel like the education piece is so important. Because if it was like a light bulb to me, it's going to be like a light bulb for somebody else.
And it comes on like a light bulb. I remember the first time someone told me to feed raw, and it just made sense, but I was scared. Did you have that fear at first? Do you remember the first time you fed an animal raw?
So when I first got Bella, which I adopted her at 3, I actually fed her raw. The trainer that I was working with turned me on to it. But I didn't keep it up. Because it got too expensive. It was quite a bit of work. And, I look back on it, I didn't know what I was doing. But it was a pre-made that he recommended. And, but I remember her thriving on it.
Wow.
She was a black dog, and, her coat looked wonderful. Of course, the poos were, non-existent, and it makes me sad that I didn't stay with it.
Well, I think what happens is, and I've seen this in my wellness center that I have, people want to do it, and then they see these commercial diets, and especially the large dogs. It's the biggest challenge with a large dog because clearly they eat more food. And when you're talking about a raw diet or a species appropriate diet, which we're going to talk about in a minute what that is, but when you get a dog on it and they think, okay, I have to buy this package of commercial food, and it gets so expensive. And then what happens is they think that's the only option. It's either kibble or it's this very expensive food. And a lot of times, which is why I do a lot of education for people, that there's so much more in between. You don't have to go all the way down to kibble. And that's how we met, I think. Like how I remember you giving me a question is, what do I do? Because you work with rescue dogs. So that becomes something that is very challenging because, you could have 200 rescue dogs and you want them to be healthy and get adopted out and go through all of this. But I think that that's the problem and that's why you went back to kibble, I'm guessing, is because you thought it was this expensive commercial diet or kibble. Is that probably why you chose?
Absolutely. And
yeah.
And it was also at a time where we just didn't have as much information as we do now, and ways to get that information.
Yeah, I know when I first went on to raw, there was nothing. We're going back 20 years. There was nothing, so we have so much more available to us, which is great. She goes back onto kibble. Did you notice a decline in her health at all? Her skin, her coat? Do you remember seeing that?
I guess that her coat got a little bit duller, but I didn't really notice any other declines in her health. She seemed pretty healthy otherwise. The bladder thing was very sudden.
That's the one problem I say when I talk to clients is, unlike humans, usually when we have some kind of a health issue, our lifespan is so much longer. So we usually have time that we could maybe fix it. If it's a nutritional deficiency, if nutrition can help us feel better, if those things, we have time to fix it. By the time our pets show us the symptoms and the signs of nutritional deficiencies or declines or the effects of poor diet, there's almost usually not enough time for us to fix it, which is why it's so important for us to start them off from puppies and maintain it throughout their life, because it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. In 1 year, 1 year of deviating off of that and doing stuff to your pet could end up not being able to be fixed. I get those dogs all the time where people come to me. Sadly, the number one reason people come to me is because their animal is already sick, and now they want to put them on a good diet. And I'll do it, but it's not going to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so and now you're back working you're working at the rescue, and you end up with 3 dogs.
3 of my own. Yeah, and typically at least 1 or 2 foster dogs.
So you almost always have at least 5
generally,
dogs at home.
And
are these big,
they're all
and
big
they're
dogs.
all big dogs?
So,
is one of those dogs the dog that you got off the metronidazole, or got rid of the diarrhea without metronidazole? Okay, I just want to share this GIF that he sent me. I had that feeling, Brian. I am not kidding. When you sent that to me, I laughed so hard. So for our listeners, metronidazole is used. It's overused. I wish it was wiped off the planet. But if you take your pet to a veterinarian and your dog's had diarrhea for 1 or 2 days, 9 times out of 10 they'll give you metronidazole. Metronidazole is what I call the worst gut destroyer of all time. You put a dog on metronidazole and it could take you months, years to fix the problem. So Brian sends me a pic. I wish I had it to show, but it's like this little kid who's just so excited. And Brian says this is him knowing that he got a dog's diarrhea under control without metronidazole. And that feeling, it's amazing because you realize, right? I didn't have to use drugs. How did you do it? What did you do to get the diarrhea to stop?
So I fasted her for 24 hours. And then something I learned from you, brought her back to solid food through bone broth and bananas for a couple of days.
Yeah. So I always tell people, you got to be really, really careful when I'm counseling people. Diarrhea can be a sign of really nothing, and it can be a sign of very, very serious stuff. So when I'm talking to a lot of listeners, I need to make sure I say that, is because I don't want somebody who's got a dog laying in the corner who's lethargic and vomiting and those kind of things. But it is something that I will use for an animal who knows.
Yep.
He was a rescue dog. So, do you know what brought on the diarrhea?
I probably too much liver. Yep.
Too much liver. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the saying we always say, feed the dog in front of you. So that's one of the problems when you're starting out and you're learning about species appropriate diet. Sometimes people panic because they give something and then the dog gets diarrhea and they think it's really bad because their friend told them that liver was good and then they gave liver and then the liver. But you really want to feed the dog in front of you. Every dog is different. And that's the big challenge, especially for someone like you. You're working in rescue. You've got your own 3 dogs. You're fostering dogs. Like, yeah, maybe the road you went around, maybe you should have been a vet. Yeah. Although we talked about that, right? Yeah, we talked about how scary it could be if we both became vets because neither one of us are veterinarians. Remember what? Do you remember that conversation? Yeah. So we both said maybe it's a good idea that we're not veterinarians because sometimes you can get into vet school and you can get a little distracted. There's a lot of vets that don't believe in a raw diet, and I thank God every day that I'm not one of those vets. So.
Yeah, I don't think it would have turned out. I think I had I probably had like a Disney movie, view of what life as a vet would be, and I think I would have had a rude awakening, and probably got burned out really quickly.
I'm not trying to discourage anyone from being a vet, but my good friend who I've actually had on the show as a co-host before just told me just yesterday that he talked to a lifelong friend of his who went all the way through vet school. They hadn't talked in a few years and they were just talking, and he says, so how do you like it? And he says, I don't think I like it. I mean, how sad is that? He went all the way through. He's in private practice and he's now saying, I don't think I like it. So it's just hard because, there's a lot of pressure put on veterinarians and there's so much information that's available out there. So tell me, so what's the little dog's name that you were able to get him off, away from?
Her name is Millie.
You may not know this, but Millie was my bulldog. She's on my logo of everything. She was the greatest. Oh, Millie. So she ends up with a little bit of diarrhea, but no other symptoms. She's acting normal.
I had no doubt that it was just something that she ate. Something just didn't agree with her tummy, because everything else was normal. And because I have to feed. Well, I don't have to feed them kibble, but it doesn't make much sense for me to feed them raw when I know that they're going to get adopted and probably go right back to kibble.
It could be hard too if you have a rescue dog. If there's anybody listening that has a rescue and you put them on a raw diet and then they go and they live at a home and they put them on kibble and the diarrhea, there's a chance you're getting the dog back. So you got to be really careful with changing dogs back and forth and stuff. So how did she have it? How long did she have it?
Just a day or two, yeah.
A day or two?
Yep.
Just a day or two, yeah. So the reason that we do a fast, were you scared to do the fast?
No,
Is that the first time you fasted
I fast
a dog?
my 3 dogs regularly, generally once a week.
Yeah. Oh, good. So many people, I also fast my dogs. My dogs do fasting quite a bit. But I remember the first time I fasted a dog, I felt so bad. I was like, oh my God. They stare at you, right? And they're like, oh. But now my dogs just kind of are like, oh, I guess it's fasting day. They probably roll their eyes. So she gets fasted. The reason we fast dogs is because we want to, when an animal has diarrhea, right, they end up with like inflammation. So we fasted her for 24 hours. And then slowly brought her up. How soon before you saw the diarrhea not anymore?
About 2 days. So, yeah, a day and a half. I think I gave her 3 meals of the bone broth and banana.
Oh, good. What's interesting is they did some studies on metronidazole. You know how long it takes for metronidazole to get rid of the diarrhea? 2 days.
Yeah.
It's 2 days. So I think it makes people feel better that there's a place for vets, I think, but I think when your dog has diarrhea for a day or two and they're acting completely normal and you gave them something that they weren't used to, you can kind of, so kudos to you. And I love that. I just loved it. So now you have your 3 personal dogs. Are they completely on a raw diet?
Yep.
Okay. Tell us what that is to you. So everybody hears the word raw, and some people think that means you just go to the chicken and you do store and you get some raw chicken and then you give them chicken. Can you tell us like what that means? And did you start off with what you're going to end with, right? Like, or did you start off little by little, like, okay, now I'm going to do a raw egg? Tell us how it all started.
So when after I watched Pet Fooled and I made the decision to go raw, I researched some commercial options. The first one, and I know it's not raw, but the first one that I tried was Honest Kitchen. That was the first one, and cost was still
Honest Kitchen, just so people know, it's a dehydrated, right? It's actually, interestingly enough, usually one of the first ones that people go to because it feels more like a kibble because you pour it into a bowl like a kibble does. So that's almost always one of the first ones. And then from there,
because my dogs are big and I have 3 of them, cost was always a consideration. So I was, trying to figure out how much this was going to cost.
Sure.
I did Honest Kitchen for like a month, and it was expensive. A lot more than I thought it was, and I wasn't even really adding, meat to it like they say that you can. And so I got to talking to a friend of mine. She's a dog trainer, and I asked her what she fed her dogs, and she said raw. I didn't know that she fed her dogs raw, and so she kind of became my mentor through this process, which is something that I would always recommend that new feeders go find. Is somebody that's doing
Good
it,
advice.
somebody that you can
Good
talk
advice.
to, that you know, not a stranger on the internet, not somebody in a Facebook group. Do a post on Nextdoor or something like that, and just see who in your community is doing it.
Yeah.
Because I asked her probably. I asked her probably 3 questions a day for like 2 weeks. Just every time I thought of something, what about this, and how do you do that, and how do you calculate this, and she was so patient. She answered, every single question, and I think that we probably learned. She probably learned some stuff too, because I probably asked her questions that she wasn't even thinking of.
She's like, I never even thought of that. Yeah, I learn stuff every day. I love
so
people.
She told me that she fed a commercial raw. There's actually a company here in Colorado, and that's what she had been feeding for years. And so looked them up on the internet, ordered some food from them, and that's what I've been feeding ever since. So it's a Raw Dog Food and Company.
What company is that?
And they do various commercial blends, typically 80-10-10, but they have some additional blends that have the.
So let's tell our listeners a little bit. What is, when you say 80-10-10, what does that mean for somebody who's never?
So that's 80% muscle meat,
raw diet,
10% bone, 10% organ, of which 5% of that is always liver.
Okay, so it's perfect. A lot of times, so there's so many different variations of what we should be feeding our dogs, and so in the raw community, you'll hear 80-10-10 a lot, and that's what that means. I just wanted to clarify that for them, because Brian has come such a long way just kind of learning. So they make these blends that are 80-10-10. What kind of proteins do they want to
beef, chicken, pork, duck, rabbit, venison. The Raw Dog Food and Company.
What's the name of the company? Raw Dog Food.
Yep, and
Raw Dog. So a raw diet is a lot more than just raw meat.
It is.
And is the bone ground down?
There's, depending on the blend, sometimes the bones are the chunks are a little bit bigger, but they're never really bigger than like the size of a fingernail.
I can't wait till you guys start selling out in California so I can put it in my store. California's got some issues, so it's hard for companies to get out here. So, but I'm excited about it because you guys have some really great proteins. I wish I had. So they make those. Do they do any? So they make the blends. Is this something that you can get at a little store, or is it shipped to people?
It's an online business, and we ship anywhere in the United States. We do local delivery, or you can pick it up at the warehouse if you're local in Colorado.
And all three of your dogs are now eating
basically,
them? Yeah. So you're working to pay for your dogs to eat. Absolutely. With 3 big dogs, I have 1 big dog and 1 little dog that live in my home, but I have 2 rescues that fosters. I don't know. They're going to live out their senior years with me, and they're all on a species. I call it a species appropriate diet because I get really concerned when I say raw that someone will misunderstand what that means and not know that it means the bone and the organ meat and all of that. So we try really hard to say species appropriate diet. So okay, so they all. How old are your 3 dogs you have right now?
And Apollo is 3, and Riley is 5.
Wow, and they're all on a species appropriate diet.
And I don't.
You're such a good dog dad. You have cats?
Just the dogs. And I'll never. I don't care if I have to work every day of the rest of my life. I'll never not feed my dogs this diet. For me, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. All you got to do is look at my dogs. That's, again, we talked earlier about the common sense.
Yeah.
After that, it's just look at a raw fed dog. And I get compliments all the time. People are like, your dog looks great. Looks like an athlete. He's cut. The weight's good. I'm shocked at how many dogs are overweight. I mean, I see that in the rescue all the time.
Oh my gosh, I just had my golden retriever out in front playing ball yesterday, or frisbee. She plays both, but she was playing frisbee, and this couple walked by, and I said, "Oh yeah, she just does this all day. She'd do this all day." And then I mentioned she's going to be 9 on June 23rd, and they thought she was 2. They were like, the guy was like, "I thought she was a puppy." I'm like, "No, she's literally going to be." I have her papers. She's 9 at the end of June, and she'll just be out there all day and night. And that makes me feel really good when they don't even know me, and they just thought my dog was a puppy because of how much she can run and jump and get her ball and get her frisbee, and it's not validation. I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but it does make you feel good, right? When someone says, "God, your dog looks," it's like saying your kid looks good, right? Like it's just a warm feeling because it's hard. It's work. It's not easy. I don't think it's not hard to feed them. It's hard, especially when financial. Kudos to you, 3 large dogs. I know you're working to pay for your dogs. I know you are, because I know even when we do it, at home and we try to get more sources and we do it, it can be very expensive. So, but that's such a good feeling when someone recognizes it. Wait till you have a vet take the blood Have you had that happen where you go to the vet and they're like going to take the blood and the vet's like, oh, your dog's doing really well. And then they find
Yeah,
out you're feeding raw and they're
I
like,
haven't
well, that's
I haven't
weird.
taken my dogs to their conventional vet since I started feeding raw. I take that back. I did have to go
Yeah.
last year. One of my dogs got out because of the fireworks, and he was running the streets all night and tore up his paws.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
And I took him to the vet less about the paws and more about just I just wanted a general check because he had been out all night. I didn't know if there's something internal or anything like that.
Yeah.
The person that found him when
Right.
she called me said that he was injured, and my heart sunk. But it turned out he was just limping because of his paws. But that's the only time I've taken him to the vet, and I was actually very surprised because they did ask what I was feeding him, and I thought to myself, "Here we go." And I told him, and
we all
she
know
wrote it
that
down and
here
said,
we
"Okay,
go.
we'll be right back." So I was kind of relieved that I didn't have to go through, but I was prepared. I was.
Yeah. I used to, a long time ago, myself, I've never really had to use vets too often. I do run blood tests on my dogs periodically, and then clients would ask me, well, what do you tell the vet? And I used to say, just don't tell them. It's not worth the fight. But now I tell people, tell them if they don't like it and they're not willing to work with you, then you need to. And the reason why is because the more we speak up and we have the guts to say what we're feeding, and they're seeing healthy animals in front of them, they're going to have to back down. They're just, it's too many of us now. It used to only be a few of us now, but I'm like, there's too many people that are reaping the benefits of this. So we need to speak up when we go into our vets. And if, the hard part is when you have a sick animal. So you have a sick animal, like the cat who just passed away, although her vet completely on board with raw. But when you have a sick animal and you go to the vet and they ask you what you feed, if they ask you, surprisingly, a lot of conventional vets won't even ask that, which I always find weird. But then what happens is the vet says, "Oh, it's because you're feeding raw." But then you think, well, what about all those dogs that are sick that aren't like, what is there? So if theirs is, so it's interesting how they'll blame everything on raw if they find out and nothing on the kibble. If they won't go, oh, it's because you were feeding pedigree. You won't do that. It's strange. But I'm glad you spoke up. I was a big chicken shit. I said it. I was such a big chicken shit in the beginning.
Yeah,
I would not
absolutely.
tell them that
I agree. I mean,
I'm glad you did.
We need to tell people and like I said, I challenge any vet to criticize what I'm feeding them while looking at my dog. I mean, so, and I have done blood work.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Although I do the blood work through my holistic vet.
Good.
I
Do you think it was hard? Do you think it's hard to feed them? Like, I know I said it could be a lot of work, but is it, when I say work, I just mean the psychological part of it, but the actual feeding 3 large dogs a raw diet.
So I feed them twice a day.
Does that take you to do
and
do they eat once a day?
I would say that it probably takes me, 15 minutes to put everything, and that includes the 2 Fosters right now. They take a little bit longer because I'm doing a lot of toppers with those guys. One of the things that I like about the Raw Dog Food and Company blends that I use is the convenience factor because it's all right there. I don't have to supplement anything to that unless I want to. Now I do feed I do feed like 2 fish meals a week. So 2 meals a week they get nothing but fish. So sardines, mussels, oysters, just kind of a mix of all that. But otherwise I just use the blends. And even though it's more expensive to do that, because just like with kibble, I mean, you're paying for that convenience. Um, but with the 3 dogs, it's just
Yeah.
I don't know. I just decided that it was worth it, the extra money for the time, because I don't have the time to do a lot of prepping, and
Yeah. The prepping, I know people that do. They prep every Sunday, and they do. I'm not a regular prepper. Let's call it that. I'm not a regular prepper. Someday when I retire and I'm not running the spa, and I tell people this all the time, I love to bathe dogs. I spend a lot of time in the bathtub area. So one day when I'm not doing that, I might do more prepping. I love to do it when I do it, but it can be very time consuming to prep, but it's generally a less expensive thing to do. But I've always thought that feeding your dog kibble is actually not convenient if you think about it. So I have clients who feed their dogs kibble, and it's so convenient. They just pour it in the bowl, and then they go watch TV, and the dog eats it, whatever. But those people are at the vet hospitals 2 and 3 times a month. I'm like, how inconvenient is it? They come in and then they tell me, oh, I was just at the vet. I'm like, that doesn't seem very convenient. It seems you got to make the appointment. You got to go there. You got to pay the bill, not to mention the cost. So to me, I feel like my dogs are very easy to take care of because they never have to do anything. I don't have to go to the vet. I don't have to go do all that stuff. So I actually think a species.
I mean, in 15 minutes, I mean, I spend longer making my meals.
If you're doing it right.
I mean, what's 15 minutes to prep their meals. So they are not picky at all.
Do they gobble it all up? I'm very lucky
that they will eat anything.
Yeah. So dogs who are eating and are truly healthy. So a lot of times we can't tell if they're healthy. We think they're healthy. They look healthy on the outside, but on the inside they may not be so healthy. A healthy, species-appropriate dog will gobble their food up and eat it. So you be proud of that. So when you have dogs that are super picky and kind of turning their nose up, there might be something else going on with their digestive enzymes, or something else is going on that's forcing them not to want to eat certain foods. And then also there could be reasons why there's something wrong with that food. But you have dogs that are gobbling up their food, you're doing something right.
Yep. Some days I think they eat better than I do.
Awesome. My dogs eat better than I do. My husband is a health nut, and he's like, if you ate even half as healthy as your dogs did, you'd live forever. I'm like, I know, but they don't know about brownies. They don't know. They don't know. I can't help it. So the rescue that you work with, I know that and I'm never going to be that person. And I actually tell people to be very careful talking to people who get so forceful about raw only. And if you don't feed raw, you're a horrible person. I don't believe that at all. I want to get people in the best spot they can. But the rescue that you work for, do they support raw? Do they believe dogs should be eating raw? Are they on board if you want to, if you saw an animal that looked like they would benefit from it, would they be able to support that?
We actually have a dog right now that I really want to get on raw. But I need to find a foster for her. Because she's in a boarding facility, and we can't do the raw while she's in there. So
would the boarding facility do the raw?
They don't have
available to them?
They don't have the ability to store it, and given the number of dogs that are there, I don't know. We could probably ask, but I would rather.
Only reason I ask is because I always thought, I can't always take in a dog from a rescue. I can't always foster. I'm fostering 5 kitties right now, but I do the best that I can. I always thought I would love to start where you sponsor a dog. So I'm not necessarily, he's not in my home, but maybe I sponsor and pay for his food. So if that opportunity ever comes up, I know you have one, but if you have a dog I'm just putting this out there right now because this is something I've been wanting to do, let me know, because I can maybe sponsor a dog and buy his food for a month or something until he gets adopted, if that's something you think a dog will benefit from. But maybe that's something that the rescue organization could do, is start finding sponsors. Because we always say, it's like there's no in between. You have the rescue and then you have the foster, but there needs to be that in between person that's like, I can help pay for his food for a month, instead of just, not that I want to take away from, I'm sure that the rescue does take donations, right? So what's the name of the rescue? Two blondes?
Originally, yeah.
Is it two?
It was started by two
people
blondes
who have blonde hair.
That's where the name came from. The original founder is still with the rescue. Her original partner has gone her own way, yeah, anything.
Do they rescue all breeds, or does it large breeds, small breeds, anything?
So right now, I think we have about 350.
How many dogs do they have at any given time?
So we're primarily a foster-based organization.
Is this out of do they have a building?
Probably 95% of those dogs are in foster homes, and then we do have a couple of boarding facilities that we contract with. If I guess that's the best term, for dogs that we don't have fosters for, or can't be in a foster home for whatever reason, whether it be behavioral or something like that. So
a lot of wow. So I'm serious, Brian. If you come across a dog, let's do this. Let's do this for our listeners. We'll post the before and after pictures. If you come across a dog who you think can benefit from a species appropriate diet, the Spawdcast will sponsor him financially to pay for the food if you promise that you'll take control over it and make sure you feed him the food from the company you work for. Deal? Yeah, and then we'll take pictures, and we can show people this is a dog that we're sponsoring, and we can get him, healthy and adopted. Pick one that you think won't get adopted, because sometimes people just want, the dog that looks pretty and his coat's pretty. Not everybody wants. So see if you can maybe pick one that really would probably get benefit, get adopted if he didn't have
occasionally
ears and licking his paws all the time. Do you guys get those dogs?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you pick one, and I'll sponsor his food for 2 months, and or until he gets adopted. But I'll sponsor his food, and then maybe whoever adopts him will, follow suit. So
absolutely.
If he really likes
sounds like a.
We'll talk about it. That'll be a fun project. Yeah, we just had a wellness dog come in. We did a fast and went through and watched the process. It's a fun process to watch. It's fun. Okay, so you have your 5 dogs are in your house right now, right? Wow, what a
no, I live in suburbia.
Awesome. Do you have a big property?
I don't.
Yeah. You're in Colorado, right? Do they have laws on how many dogs you can have? But we won't talk about that. You're not breaking any laws. That's okay. You're not breaking any laws. California does too.
That's always my argument.
But those are fosters. They're not actually your dogs.
I'm below the limit on permanent resident dogs.
Yeah. No. Well, it's true. I mean, if you're just fostering them, it should be fun. Yeah. Somebody's got to take them, otherwise they end up in the pounds and stuff. So if there's some advice you can give, I started this podcast out talking about how anybody can do this. You don't have to be a vet to do this. You don't have to be, somebody who's running an organization or a rescue or working for a dog food company as you do. Give our listeners 2 pieces of advice if they just have never done a species appropriate diet before and they're just starting. I know you gave one, So I'm asking for two more. One, and which I think is fabulous, is work with somebody to mentor you. Somebody, like, you can go online and you can go to Facebook and you could contact me and you could probably even contact Brian, but you really want someone very close, right, that might be able to look at your dog and see your dog and really communicate with you. That was great advice.
Keep it simple.
What other advice would
in
you
the
give
beginning
to somebody just starting out?
Don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating things. At the end of the day, we're just feeding dogs. We're not building rockets. We're not going to the moon. We're just feeding our dogs what they were meant to eat. So try not to overthink it, because I feel like that a lot of people quit because and sometimes it's because they start to get advice from the wrong people, or people just try to give them too much information at the beginning, and they're just like, I can't do this, it's not worth it. And if you just keep it simple, there's a lot of debate about 80-10-10, whether it's balanced and it's not AFCO approved and all this stuff. It's 100 times better than kibble. And if that's all you did for the first month, while you were learning and getting more information and finding more sources and things like that, you're not going to kill your dog. Even if you were just feeding, my big thing is variety. You and I have talked about complete and balanced, and what does that even mean? To me, it's all about variety. We don't balance our meals every day as humans, and neither do dogs. And if you're just doing a variety of proteins, you're going to get all of those nutrients.
Rotation is really, really, really important. And I think we've been taught through dog food manufacturing companies that your dog should eat the same thing every day. That's what they taught us. They taught us that you can get it in a bag and it can be balanced and you can feed it to your dog every day. And those dogs that get the complete and balanced diet from a commercial pet food still go into the veterinarian and have blood tests run, and they're deficient in vitamins and minerals. So don't fool yourself into thinking because the bag says it's complete and balanced that your dog is eating a complete and balanced diet. It just simply isn't true. Your best bet is to do a whole lot of different rotations and stuff with your animal. I think it's very dangerous. Even if I completely formulated a diet for you that was complete and balanced based on formulation, I still would want you to rotate your pet's food, because everybody metabolizes stuff differently. But God, Brian, how long have you been feeding?
2.
Like, how many years? It's been 10 years, 5 years, 7? 2 years you've been feeding raw. You've learned. You're amazing. You're amazing. I mean, you think about 2 years and how much knowledge you have and that you're sharing. It's not hard. Like you said, it's a lot of it's common sense. It's just getting out of that mindset that it should be poured into a bowl. So those are amazing advice, right? Get a mentor. Keep it simple. I can't agree with that more. Keep it simple, because you're right. If I sat here and told you all the different theories, just alone the theories on a species appropriate diet, your mind would be blown. Like the mono feeding, the rotation feeding, the not feeding veggies to not feeding bone. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. But when you're first starting out, your best bet is just keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's great. You have another one? I know I asked
just
for
to be
3,
careful with,
but I feel like those cover a lot.
Groups and stuff, because there's a lot of information out there, which is a good thing, but it can be overwhelming, and there can be some pretty judgmental people out there. which is that, that's my biggest pet peeve,
Oh my gosh.
because
Boy,
at the end of the day, what we do, we're doing for the dogs. And if we're all of us, and if we're out attacking each other, who's suffering?
all of us.
If
Yeah.
you turn this process into such a confusing process that it makes somebody quit, who suffers? They go back to kibble. So I don't ever see the need for
No, it's true.
you're doing it wrong, or I've seen people, it's like, well, if you're going to do that, you might as well just feed kibble. It's like, that's the most
Yeah. Which is just horrible. You didn't do any good. Because some people, that's why what you're saying is like who you follow and why you follow that person that you want to be your mentor is as important as what's going in your pet's mouth. Because if you follow the wrong person, some people just believe they just want to be right. They don't want to educate you. Because if you want to educate people, then you need to start with, if I was a teacher, I wouldn't start with a high school student. If I wanted to really teach somebody, one person, I wouldn't say, well, wait until you're a high school student, then I'll teach you. If you want to teach someone, you start from the beginning. You have to learn their ABCs first. And if you're a really good teacher, then you understand that. And you start from the beginning stages and you work their way up. You don't degrade them and tell them they're stupid and why are you doing this? But there are so many people out there that feel like it's all or nothing. And I don't think that that's right. Especially for somebody who eats, brownies. I can't sit here. I'd be a hypocrite if I was like, oh, if you get, even if you give your pet something that may not be so healthy for them, I'm not a big, I'm talking about a treat. I'm not talking about their everyday meal. People will ask me and say, well, my dad still gives his dog potato chips. It drives me absolutely insane because he gives them to her every day. But her main diet is fairly healthy, so I kind of back off. But you're right, who we follow, why we follow them. Oh my gosh, so important because people are just attacking people all over the internet. It's crazy. And there's such a variation, right? You could get a group right now that is all about pedigree. Pedigree is the best thing on the planet. You could get those. There's a whole group on that will do that. But you just have to ask yourself, and there's value. I always tell people there's always value in the things that are negative and positive because that's how you learn. You have to know both sides before you can. But thing is our side is just common sense. I don't know how else to say it. It's not a side. It's just common sense. Whole fresh food.
And I like to.
It's better than processed food. I don't know why there's an argument.
The rescue gives me kind of a platform.
That's really, really great advice.
To be able to talk to people, about the things I've learned. But I find that what I enjoy most is just giving them the information that I didn't get. We talked earlier. It's like, why has my vet never told me any of this stuff? Why am I just now finding out about titer tests? Why was that never an option? So, when I talk to like the fosters, I'm not trying to change their mind. I'm giving them more information to compare with what they already know, and then, letting them make their own decision.
That is such a profound thing you just said. And if everybody would realize you're not here to change someone's mind, because then that's why people get defensive, because you're not listening to me and I'm trying to change your mind. Stop trying to change people's minds and just lay out the information. It's up to them. A
couple of fosters have switched over to raw.
Have you mentored anybody, Brian? Oh, good. Yeah, because I feel like you would be a really great patient,
I definitely want
great mentor for people. You should really start thinking about doing nutrition.
Go down the road of a certification and get some more knowledge on the whole process. And, right
Yeah.
now, I mean, I'm really good at feeding my dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have a really good, you have the rescue, and so those dogs could benefit greatly from you learning from. You're not going to kill a dog. We're feeding dogs, like you said. We're just feeding dogs. That's a really good foundation, and the reason I'm pushing for that is 'cause I'm always pushing for people to I don't want to say to do great things because you're doing great things, but sometimes I see something in people. Your energy is so. I could see somebody scared to death to do this and coming to you and feeling a sense of warmth and calmness. And I think you would be such a valuable
I
asset to so
appreciate
many
that.
people out in Colorado that are
Very nice,
scared.
and
I just
I'm
love
happy to help anybody. And
yeah,
like I said, we
yeah, yeah. So if somebody wants to get a hold of, I know that the food isn't available everywhere, but just really quick, could they get a hold of you if they had questions, if they wanted to start feeding their dog the same food from the raw dog food company? Could they call and just talk to you and say, hey, you know what, I heard Brian on this fabulous podcast,
yeah,
and
they could call
he
the company.
said that
The
I could
owner
call
is
him and
a
he's going to
certified
help me figure out
nutritionist,
what
so
food to feed my dog. Could they
she
call you
usually is the
there?
one that answers the phone. And we're always helping people.
Perfect.
I don't.
Perfect. Do you know that number off the top of your head? That's okay. We'll get it from you,
Dee
and it'll
Dee.
be in our show notes, so everybody will be able to get that. So they can maybe call and just ask to talk to you. What's the owner's name? Dee Dee. So they could call and talk to Dee Dee and get some more information there. So, all right, Brian. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Is there any last? I know you gave some great advice today from just. I don't want to say just a guy who wanted to feed his dogs, but that's what it is. Like I'm just a girl who wanted to feed my dogs better. You're just a guy. I'm just a girl. We just wanted to feed our dogs better and didn't know it was this whole world of controversy, right? So, but is there any last minute things you want to say? I hope people will call you. You got to let me know. And you got to let me know what dog I'm going to sponsor because I want to sponsor a dog. And just really quick, if there's anybody out there that wants to sponsor another dog, please let me know and I'll get a hold of Brian and make sure that
Thanks for
maybe
the
we can sponsor
opportunity,
more than
and
one
it's
dog.
been a pleasure to talk to you.
Is there anything else you want to say?
I found your podcast. I'm not sure. I probably just a general search. Probably put dogs into Apple Podcasts. But I mean, from the very first one I listened to, I was like, got to listen to all these.
That's how I do it.
So I binged them all over a period of. At the time, I was doing a lot of drive-in for the rescue, so I had a lot of time to binge all those, and I liked it because it was, in the beginning it was you and Brittany, and I was like, just people talking about dogs, and it's like, these are, I, two people I could sit and talk about dogs all day, all day with. So
all day. I could talk about dogs all day. I'm glad you're enjoying them. We've gone through a lot of changes. Like, it was me and Brittany, and then she's gone, and then I did it in another studio, and then another studio, and then the big studio. I was doing it in the big studio because I wanted to get on YouTube. But no matter what, through all of it, I just want to talk about dogs. Like in the beginning, I thought I had to have a script. You have no idea. Like I showed up with paper, and I thought I had to have all my questions written down, which was just I'm a talker. When I was a little kid, my dad used to call me Mouth. I kid you not. He said he would get home from work and I would just, I love to talk. So putting me on a script was not going to do any good. And I love to talk to other people that love animals. Because as a little girl, I thought I was crazy and I was the only one that really loved animals this much. And so I love putting people like you on the show because I don't want this to be about a podcast with. I love the vets, and thank God we have the vets that I put on the show that are willing to back you and I up when we're saying these things. So we need that support. But I really want to speak to the person who is listening and thinking, can I do this? Because when you hear a veterinarian talk, sometimes you just think, I can't do it, or someone who's been doing it. So I think it's so great that you were willing to come on. When I first, I hope you don't mind me sharing this story, but when I first talked to him and asked him if he would come on the podcast, he said, I don't have anything. My story's not, I don't know. I said, are you kidding? No. I think that we all share our stories in our lives, and I think it's great that you kind of went for a full circle. As a little kid, you thought you wanted to be a veterinarian, and then you go off into the Air Force, and I can only imagine how hard that was. And then you come back to that softer side of you and say, I want to take care of animals and have them be a part of my life is amazing. So I just want to thank you for coming on and spending this time with us and helping share your story so that other people feel a little more confident when they go and feed their dogs. I know we could talk forever because there's so many other subjects, right? Learning, because diet is only one part of it. And I know you've learned about, over vaccinations. You mentioned titers. These are all things that we talk about on the show. So thanks for bringing those up too. So. All right, we're going to put in the show notes how you guys can get a hold of Brian. If you want to get some food there, if you want to be a sponsor for one of his dogs that is rescued, please contact me. I think that's something maybe I should start doing. If you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me. I started a Facebook group called Millie's House. That's one place where you can guarantee that I'll answer your questions. Saving Pets One Pet at a Time is a Facebook group that I'm an admin for, and I'm very pleased to work with some of the admins that I work there. That's another location. If you want to talk to me directly, you can always call me at the spa. I'm usually baiting dogs, but they can pull me away for a few minutes sometimes, or I can call you back, but you can certainly reach out to me. You can go on to my website, which is on the show notes, and you can also email me. There's all sorts of ways to get a hold of me. And I guess that's it. We'll wrap this up. Brian, thank you so much. All right. Have a good day.